with another iteration of the Multiversal Bachelor, this time the Vausc Bachelor for my precious uninitiated. This is the series where we rank the dateability of characters from games we played, because that is fun to me. We are judging on 5 qualities. There's cutitude. This is their, I don't know why I gestured 5 for cutitude when this is the first quality. This is their physical appearance as determined in quality by me. We're talking fashion. We're talking if they've got a huggable face. We're talking if they don't look all that scary. Cutitude out of 10, this comprises 20% of the final score. Then we got strength out of 5, this comprises 10% of the final score. This is how good they are in a fight. We're talking battle tactics, we're talking physical strength and magical strength. We're talking battle experience. We're talking... really loudly, apparently. We're talking how strong they are in the context of the world. For instance, someone in the world of The Last of Us is not going to be judged on the same metrics as someone in the world of Final Fantasy. People in Final Fantasy throw meteors at each other. People in The Last of Us throw rocks at each other. Next up is Righteous Honey, out of 5, also comprising 10% of the score. This is their sense of morality, whether or not they are a good guy in the context of the game and story, and otherwise how strongly they hold to their convictions. Look, we all like dating an anti-hero. I'm just not sure I want to date the Joker himself. We've got Quality and Cuddly out of 10. This comprises 20% of the final score. This is how fun it is to spend time with this person. It's well and good if they're real nice and good at fighting goblins, but if their pastimes are like playing backgammon at sleazy bars, I want no part of it. I want to sit on the couch and play video games. God damn it. I need someone who will do that with me. I need it. I mean, it will help their score. No judgment here. A little judgment here. And finally, Kindliness out of 10. This comprises 40%, this is 8, 40% of the final score. A little different from Righteous Honey. This is not just where the sense of morality is, but how are they personably? Are they nice to people? Do they care about other people's well-beings? Are they not rude bastards? These are all lovely qualities to have in a partner. And so we're going through the Game of Thrones cast. I omitted a few characters if they were kids, or I wasn't sure if they were kids. And also a few characters whom I couldn't remember anything about, I'm pretty sure have been omitted. But how would I know? I couldn't remember anything about them. Starting off strong with our dear protagonist, Ara. I think she's a very pretty lady. She's a little scary looking. She often wears a very intense expression, but in her defense, she's in intense circumstances. But other than that, she is very pretty. And I do dig her whole, the Axis' Kingdom's royal outfit with the blue, poncho and the copper armor underneath it is really cool looking. Strength out of 5. I think Ara and Evelyn are probably Our Evelyn and the White Sages are probably what a 5 is in this universe. They're out here fighting gods and dragons and not breaking a sweat. I think a 5 is pretty fair there. Ara is not someone you want to get into a bar fight with unless you're trying to outrun your debts in the most grim way. As for Righteous Honey, I think Ara is probably the embodiment of righteousness in this world. I mean, she's, her solution to every problem is stabbing it, basically. In our world, that's considered a pretty vigilante and somewhat uncool thing to do. But all the same, she is kind of willing to go as far as... I probably should have put this at the beginning, but spoilers for the Amber Throne. I think that's probably clear, but just in case. She's willing to go as far as possible to honor her father's dying wish, which she also aligns with. And she was the one to change his mind in the end anyway, basically. And she pays the ultimate price for it. She dies... I mean, she didn't really have to. She probably could have just left Evelyn in that crumbling wreckage, but she was like, no, I've got to finish this, and then a rock fell on her and she was over. But she did all that. She died after she'd solved the whole throne problem. And I mean, basically, when you think about it, certainly her entire adult life, because she was put into a magic coma until her adulthood, at which point she spent the entire thing trying to destroy the Amber Throne. But the majority of her life really was dedicated to this whole fixing of the throne, and she did it. Problem solved. So I think it's a max righteousness score for her. Quality of Cuddly. I mean, because she's so driven in her goals here, she is very much a dedicated protagonist-y kind of protagonist. In that the main thing that drives her every action is fulfilling this ultimate end goal and saving the day and all. All that to say, I don't really know what it would be like to hang out with her. I mean, Papel certainly seems to think Ara's cool. She quite looks up to her. None of her party members really seem to be oh, Ara, you're so sweet. I'm glad we get to hang out all the time. But they're they all look up to her and think she's a good leader. So I think there's definitely the sense that she has a charisma to her, you know? That suggests it wouldn't be like hanging out with a brick wall. And she keeps a pretty detailed journal, and she's a pretty eloquent writer. That's cool. So I think I'll give her like a little above average. I think a 6 is probably fair here. And kindliness, again, is a bit of a hard one. I think Aura's righteousness almost definitely is a much more defining quality of hers than like being a sweetheart as such. She's definitely, I wouldn't describe her as doing anything like expressly unkind throughout the story, save again a lot of stabbing people, but in her defense they usually attack first. I think it's probably fair to say she's got people's interests at heart and takes that as takes it as a responsibility of hers to keep people well and in good spirits. Like, because when you think about it, whenever she's going and like liberating prison camps and stuff, that is tangential to her goal of destroying the Amber Throne. She does not have to destroy the Amber Throne and fulfill her like righteous duty or whatever. So, and if anything, she's risking that duty by going out of her way to like liberate prison camps and stuff, which she and the others do a fair bit, actually. There's a lot of going around and saving people from like slave camps and things. So I think it's fair to give her even a bit higher than a 6. I'm like torn between 7 or 8. Because it's not like her defining characteristic, I wouldn't say, in the same way as, I don't know, Sayuri from Doki Doki. But because I like Aura and benefit of the doubt, I think an 8 is fair there. Well scored, Aura. Moving on to Axis. I mean, we never get to see much of him. I think you see him from the back without his helmet at one point, and he looks like Aura and Evelyn. He looks like he's got long white hair and like a trim but like sturdy build. But most of the times he's depicted in like his big cloak with his horned helmet and everything. It's kind of a cool look. It's a little imposing. I don't know. I think middle of the road is fine. 5 is probably fine for that. Strength. I don't know that we ever, like, hear of his battle prowess as such. I'm kind of blanking on it. In fairness, it's been like 6 months since we beat the game, so there's a lot of stuff I've just plain forgotten about some of the characters. But considering Aura and Evelyn were trained, I mean, we assume they were trained in battle in the castle, so either by Axis or by, like, one of the servants, I guess, the robo-servants, it's hard to say. I think we can give him the benefit of the doubt and say maybe not on Aura and Evelyn's level, but he's pretty strong in this world. He certainly has a lot of, like, magical power and, like, connection to the throne and everything, so he wields a lot of power generally, and he could have you killed if he wanted, or keep you safe if he wanted, in theory, which is the more pertinent aspect in the dating pool. 4 seems fair to me. Righteous Honey, now this is a bit of a tricky one because for the majority of his story, if we want to frame it like that, he is making at least what is narratively presented to us as the wrong call. He's like, oh yeah, we should use the throne and we'll be good about it and we'll keep our land safe and we'll foster a nice place even if the rest of the world kind of suffers for it, but they wouldn't be good for the throne. We'd be good for the throne. And of course, really, he's draining his citizens dry as well. He's not really making a good place for anyone, and he's pitting his own children against each other and really not doing right by them generally. But he holds to it for a long time, so that's worth some pointage, I think. And when he realizes he's wrong, he does swallow his pride and change course in the last, like, few hours of his life, which I think should be worth something. I think people should be defined to by their actions till their very last. So, interestingly, I'm going to give him 2 points here, each point for a conflicting reason. One for that he held to the wrong stance for so long and so vehemently, but then also that he was able to swallow his pride and say, screw it, this ain't right. So that's a bit weird one, but I think a 2 is probably fair there. Quality of cuddly, I don't know that we ever catch wind of a Mrs. Axis to know how nice he is in married life. Extrapolating from his relationship with his subjects and his kids, though, he does always seem a bit cold and prescriptive, doesn't he? Evelyn quite looks up to him for the brunt of the story, but I don't think you get the sense that he's the type to, like, let's go out on a family road trip and hang out. He's like, all right, let's everyone stay inside and shut up while I work. I don't want you to die, I don't want you to die, and I don't want you to bother me, and I don't want you to bother me. Basically, all of his memories, all of Aura's memories of him are him being like, no, bad, don't be that way. Why don't you just do as you're told? So I think there's probably a pretty low score here. The fact that Evelyn treasures him so dearly, and not only Evelyn, but I think there's one of the other kids whose names we don't know, or like, was it Era or someone? I think there's a sense that some of his kids anyway think quite highly of him. So I think it's fair to say it's possible there's something in there, but not really the main thing about Axis. Kindliness is probably a little higher than those other qualities. I think in his mind, he is looking out for people's best interests, and in reality, he's obviously making things worse, but kindliness is a bit more, the stat is a bit more about intention. I would say it's like 70% intention, 30% results. So although he is obviously pretty bad for Aura's well-being, and like emotional well-being, I think he is trying to make a world that is good for his kids and for everyone else. I think, though, that he's also kind of intending to use his kids, right? They're ultimately tools to forward his moral agenda with the throne. So I don't know that we can exactly say he's like a nice guy, but I think he's trying. And so I'll give him a 4. You know what? That seems fair. I mean, for a guy who is like ultimately like basically the main villain in large part, in that he's a lot of the reason things are going the way they are, I think he's still scoring pretty highly here. And granted, he's also the one who sends Aura off on her journey to right his wrongs, so without doing that, the sages almost definitely win and ruin Earth with their stupid plants. Anyway, moving on to Evelyn. I don't find her as physically attractive as Aura. I don't really know. I don't mean that in a judgy way. I think it's just something about, because she's supposed to be older than Aura, but she's Aura's older sister, but there's something about her face. She looks like younger and kind of girlish in a way that is, I don't find attractive as an adult. I would say that detracts from it. I don't think she's unattractive generally, but I think I would put her down closer to a 6. But, they're sisters. They obviously look pretty alike in a lot of ways. Yeah, I think it's just she looks a little young and baby-faced in a way that I am not quite as into, but that's fine. The characters were not put in the game specifically to be physically attracted to me. That would be decidedly strange. Strength out of 5, I think I was saying she and Aura are both basically 5s, especially by the end when she goes like full Sephiroth and is like, rah, like rips off her clothes and she's like shredded underneath and has a giant sword. And grows to like 8 feet tall. Righteous Honey, this is a tough one because she's a lot like Axis in a lot of ways, right? Very like committed to her bit until the end even. I think she even believes she was right a little longer than Axis does. It's a little hard to say whether by the end she's realizing what a mistake she's made, or if she even construes it as a mistake at all. And the ending of the game isn't exactly all peaches and cream, happy and smiles, so it's not like 100% guaranteed that Evelyn was all the way wrong. The world is still dried out and miserable because we destroyed the Ember Throne, but I at the very least would say I think Aura's cause is right in that, getting rid of the throne and giving free will back to the people, even if it means a less lush world, one they actually have to take care of. All that to say, I'm just trying to make sure I'm separating what I think the right call was from what is a generally righteous thing. But I think most people would agree that taking free will away from all the free peoples of the world just to repair Earth is not exactly the just thing to do. But her ultimate aim is creating a world that can thrive, and she is very committed to it. So I think I'll maybe even give her a point higher than Axis. But that doesn't really seem right, because I wouldn't say Axis is less righteous than her in the end. I think I'll give them the same score again. They're very similar in a lot of ways, which is why it's kind of hard to really give them differing scores. Quality of cuddly, Evelyn, even more so than Aura, is like pretty hell-bent and goal-driven. She definitely has like a cult following among the people of the Red City, I guess. So she, again, this sort of suggests a leader's charisma, not unlike Aura. But I think it feels a little more of a facade with her. I think Aura is a good leader because she believes that the people who choose to follow her are as good as her, like morally, like as good-hearted as her. And I think Evelyn is a good leader only in the sense of an effective leader because she knows how to rally people's feelings and stuff. So I think that suggests less of an ability to generate interpersonal connection with her, which I think would in turn lower this score a bit. I think probably we can give a 3 because I think she knows how to people, just does not have a great deal of interest in it. And kindliness, this is probably a bit low again. It's sort of hard to not take a bit of bias from being in Aura's shoes for that whole game, because Aura and Evelyn don't get on, obviously, as much as Aura probably wishes it weren't so. Evelyn is a total asshole to Aura, though, so it's kind of hard to take a thought about her compassion and set it aside from that. But again, I kind of like Axis. I think she's doing a lot of bad and kind of trying to ignore the bad she's doing, not because of ego, but because if she lets herself understand what a jerk she's being for too long, it will keep her from ultimately fulfilling the goal that she wants to, which she does think will help people. So you could argue there's a kindness in that. But I think moment to moment, she does not express a great deal of compassion for the well-being of others, except in really dire circumstances, like when Harpsichord gets himself injured and stuff. She's all like, no, why would you do that? I liked you, you idiot. And then after that, it's pretty quickly back to, all right, time to go turn the world into a tree, just like Papa said. Sorry about it, Evelyn. I felt real bad for you in the end, but I think we can all agree you were not your best self during the brunt of this game's runtime. Hasima! I don't remember a great deal about the personalities of the White Sages, partially because they're sort of artificial constructs. They don't really have personalities as such. I mostly put Hasima in there because I'm still bitter about the boss fight we lost her, and I want to give her a low score out of spite. And so I put the other two sages in there, just because I put Hasima in there. The sages look kind of cool. They're kind of terrifying. I think a 4 is appropriate. Strength, I think I was saying they're about on par with Aura and co. It takes Aura and some others to fight the sages. I think Aura could solo them, but she would be nervous doing it. So I think 5 is appropriate there. Righteous Honey, I mean, this is kind of a hard thing to measure, because they don't really have a sense of morality. They're just like a hive mind, right? Like, just, we must grow our race. They talk a big game about how this will be better for your society, you won't need to think anymore, your world will be lush and beautiful, bounties a blossom at every field. But that's purely survival instinct talking. It's not I don't think they have a sense of that they don't have the capacity to be proud or guilty about the fact that they're tricking people, you know what I mean? It's just an instinctual thing. It's like, is a wolf righteous for killing a bunny? I don't know. It's saving its fellow wolf species and progeny, but it's just an animal. It's just trying to survive. I don't think it has a concept of righteousness. Does that mean it has a middle-of-the-road righteous score or a 0 righteous score? I mean, I think in the context of someone I would date or not, I think that makes sense to give him a 0, because if this thing has no sense of morality, I literally can't trust it to do anything. I'd be like, oh, I'm about to get groceries, but I forgot to lock the door. Could you do that? And they would text back, sure. And it's like, I have no idea whether they're going to do it or not. They have no sense of honor or keeping a promise. They wouldn't even understand. I don't think there's anything to do there. Quality of cuddly, I mean, like, the White Sages are kind of cool. So it would be cool to hang out with them, but again, it's a bit like hanging out with a suit of armor. It's like, whoa, you're so cool! Anyway, it's not like we can talk about anything. So I'll give you 2 just for the cool points. I'll probably give that to all the sages if I remember. And then kindliness, again, it's decorum that she cares about as a pure survival thing. People's emotions just don't factor into it, so I think a 0 is fair there. Like, she speaks in a refined air, and all the sages kind of put on some degree of elegance, but it's purely camouflage. It has nothing to do with emotion, so I think that's a fair call there. Nuo! I dig his whole engineer stick. I think it's a cool look. Strength out of 5. I think Nuo, Papel, and Sira, and Oboa, Gandio, like all your other party members, they are all pretty gifted combatants. I mean, they, like, take down scores of monsters and, like, highly trained soldiers back to back. Barely break a sweat. I don't think they're quite on the tier of Aura, Evelyn, and the Sages, though, so I think for most of the party members, I'm going to give them a 4. That seems fair. Like, weirdly gifted fighters, considering not all their backgrounds are, like, military. Papel's just some kid with a gun. But she, like, totally kicks ass. And same, Nuo's just, like, some mechanic. So they're, like, weirdly gifted fighters, but I think in the context of the story, they're not meant to be, like, quite as highly trained, focused, and, like, magically powerful as such. Maybe Sira, because he's actually, like, royally trained and stuff. Same as Zara. I'll have to think about it when I get to Sira. But anyway, 4 for Nuo. Righteous Honey, he's a bit of a joiner in this. He's not really, like, maybe a bit by the end, he's like, okay, whoa, I'm only starting to realize how out of whack the world is, but I think he's a lot, unlike Papel. It is in stark contrast to Papel. He's very much indoctrinated into believing Goldwood's whole elitist shtick about how nice life is there and how everyone else out there is suffering, so it must be their fault, because we're doing great. But he's definitely not like a bad guy. He's got a bit of that stigma on him to shake off, and I don't think he ever quite eliminates it, but who does? But he's not a stick in the mud, right? Like, he definitely learns and grows, and he's open to the idea that what he's been told all his life is wrong. I mean, it's kind of hard not to be when you see Papel and Aura go through all they go through, and you realize that, hey, wait a minute. Goldwood has been kept nice by this flower petal in an old ruin somewhere, and not because we're all so damn great. I think a 3 or a 4 is appropriate here. He's not like the embodiment of righteous action in the same way as someone like Aura, but he's trying his best. I think a 3 feels fair. Quality of cuddly, he's probably one of the more personable of your hero cast. Most of the hero characters are, like, pretty stoic. Aura, I mean, obviously, aside from the fact that she literally cannot speak, because of the crown, is pretty gung-ho and goal-driven in helping people and fulfilling her ultimate goal. Sierra is just like too gloomy and depressed to really be like super companionable and like life of the party and like hanging out and doing fun stuff. Boa. Oh, well, we'll get to there anyway. But point being, a lot of the hero cast, Nuo is probably one of the more personable. He's got a bit more, he's a bit more conversational. He's got hobbies, like he's only fixing up like the airships and everything. When he starts doing that, it's not because he... Well, I think Papel had something with him. She was like, "You're gonna take me to see the world on this airship, right, big bro?" They're not literally brothers and sister, but they're like that. And he was like, "Oh yeah, sure," or whatever. But he's mostly, like, his main interest in fixing up the ships and everything is because he's into that sort of thing. He just finds it interesting. That's a cool hobby, fixing up airships. And he's a bit more conversational. I think probably a high score here is fair. 8. I'm pretty sure that's the highest we've had so far. Kindliness, he's a nice enough guy. Again, he can fall back on that whole Goldwood mindset a lot, and I think it is a bit insidious in him. But he doesn't feel proud of it, you know? I don't think he really stops to examine it too often in himself. He grows out of it a bit without really thinking about it, and he holds a bit of that a view that the Goldwood people have, that they're superior just on merit. Not on merit, like on principle. But he doesn't take it as a point of personal pride and aggression against others, I wouldn't say. I think a 6 is fair here. He's definitely not like a total jerk all the time. He just lets his upbringing get the better of him here and there, I think. But he's nice enough. You sure did get that right. Next is on the harpsichord. I mean, he's an older guy. Probably a bit out of my age range. Same with Axis, I guess. But he's pretty cool looking. His suit of armor's cool. He's got cool, curly white hair. I think a 6 is fair here. Strength, again, I think it's probably fair to put him on par with most of Ara's crewmates. He's like a solid combatant, but not really any match for Ara or Evelyn or the Sages or any of them. Righteous Honey, he's probably one of the more righteous characters. Probably one of the more righteous of the bunch. I think, from my perspective, he's very much on the wrong side of it because he's helping Evelyn, who is eventually going to try and treify the world. But he... In his defense, I think he's just a bit ignorant to how bad things can get. In his stance, and he's not even really like super gung-ho about the whole throne thing. He just wants Evelyn to rule because she has the people's support, and he thinks that's what's best for the Red City, which is what he really cares about. The Red City and all the people there. So in a way, he's kind of using Evelyn for that end, and you get the sense that he's got some loyalty to her, but if it came to choosing Evelyn or the city's best interests, you would almost definitely kick Evelyn to the curb any time, is how I felt about it. So he's maybe a little bit disingenuous, which loses a bit of righteousness, but I think in terms of his interests are with keeping the city robust and safe, and I think I would say that is fair and righteous enough. Extrapolating this to what it means for the relationship prospects. If we were dating and his priority one was keeping me alive and happy and safe, he would go to far lengths to do that. Which is very nice of him. That's kind of how it factors into the score here. Cody Cuddly, he's got a bit of like a dignified gentleman thing going, right? He's all like, yes, rather quiet. Well, give them a good wallop for me, Ara, when you get up to those silly white sages, the cheeky bastards. Ultimately, he is like a soldier and a warrior and a bit grizzled, but I think he's definitely got a sense of fun, right? He's not, like, completely joyless. That said, like a lot of the characters in this game, he's very goal-driven and a motivated person, so it's kind of hard to imagine him, like, making any time to do anything but work. But he seems like he'd be chill enough to hang out with. I think a 5 is appropriate, middle of the road there. And kindliness, again, actually, it's funny how often righteousness and kindliness are, like, in conflict with each other in this game. There are a lot of characters who will, like, sacrifice anything for their goals, and for whom the emotions of others are just not a factor. But he's certainly a lot more emotional than someone like Evelyn, at least at the start. Even if he's a bit nationalist about it, in that he wants these mostly interested in the Red Kingdom's people, I think he does care about people. His annoyance with and eventual rivalry with the Sages, in large part, comes from their disregard for, like, sentient life, right? It's not just that they don't follow Evelyn's interests. That's the main thing, but I think he's also a bit repulsed by how murdery and horrible they are. But yeah, I think he doesn't exactly stand out as terribly a jerk and terribly nice. Again, it's a hard world that they're living in, so morality, you have to kind of separate morality and personal kindness a little bit more than you would normally. But yeah, I think a 5 feels appropriate there. Ronanom, another one of the Sages. He's the one who, like, goes all like big and floppy. Again, the sages look kind of cool. Our 3 sages are spiky, floppy, and wavy. Basically. When they're in their sage, when they're in their Fefneron mode, but when they're normal, they're just like cloaked knight people, and they look cool. Would I give Asima a 4? I'm probably gonna give them all the same thing. They look pretty similar, especially particularly untransformed. Actually, I think he looks kind of cool when he's transformed too. His big shield floppy things. I was giving 5s to all the sages. I think that feels fair here. I mean, Renanom was not a very difficult boss fight, but canonically, I think, considering the destruction he was able to reap, he and the other sages are meant to be pretty tough nuggets. Righteous and Kindliness, I think we said these are both 0 for all sages, I think. Again, quality of cuddly. Renanom was even a little creepier than Hasima. I don't know, they're both terribly creepy. I gave her a 2, right, because at least she looks kind of cool. And like has cool magic powers, so it'd be like, well, that's neat, and then you would realize you have nothing else in common and be really upset and probably a little sick. You know what, actually, probably he gets a point higher than her. He's similarly creepy. He's not as creepy, though. So that... I give you 1 more point by benefit of not being creepy, but again, kindliness and righteousness just don't factor for them, so I think a 0 is fair for them. Sira, my dude! He was probably my favorite character by the end. It's either him or Harpsichord, but they're both really cool. So Sira is a bird, man. The Auric are all strange-ish looking birds. They're like pointy swallows. I wouldn't say the Auric and any of the Aurics strike me as particularly unattractive. Bird people are cool. I like the Rito in Legend of Zelda. Yeah, Sierra's a nice enough looking chap. I mean, he and Porcelian more or less look the same to me, so I think a 7 for both of them seems fair. Strength. Yeah, so this is the debate I had to give myself. Ours partners are all tough, but Sierra probably is a cut above them canonically in that he's like literally got royal training. He was like a royal knight for a time and stuff. I think it's probably fair to give him a 4 because at the time of the game, he's like a little older and sort of has been in exile for a while and is a bit out of practice and sort of weaker and stuff. Again, no shade, no judgment. You were in hard circumstances, but just being objective here. I think he might even get a 5 for righteousness also. He does some hard stuff and makes some serious personal sacrifice in the name of what he believes is fair and just. And he helps people by doing so. They exile him because they're really precious about their rules, but he works his ass off even after getting exiled to save his people, and then of course ends up coming back and fixing the rules so that fewer people get harmed in the future. I think you can probably give him a max righteousness score. He and Aura are like tight in that regard. In fact, there are a lot more parallels than I realized, and that they both kind of get cast out from their society and then have to go back to right it. That's R-I-G-H-T, although in his case also W-R-I-T-E. Claudia Cuddly, I mean, he's a pretty gloomy... I don't think he's a jerk. He's like an unkind guy. I think he is pretty kind. He doesn't even have a skill called kindness or compassion or something. I think he does. But he is very sort of gloomy and I wouldn't say especially personable. I mean, he has his moments, but I think there'd be a wall there. Once you got in, you'd be able to remind him of the good times and you'd laugh and smile and stuff. But I think it would be hard to get there. Kindliness, I think he's probably got the highest score of any of one in our team so far. I think a 9 is probably fair here. I mean, he even goes so far as like Oboa and Gendio, his societally, there's a lot of racial tension between him and the Ser, but he's usually principled enough not to let that break through, and when it matters most, he extends kindness to Oboa, and I think that is probably what is most important for that stat there. Well done, Sira. Porcelian, again, she and Sira look the same to me. I think a 7 is fair there. Strength, we don't really get the sense she does a lot of fighting. I don't know if it's that she couldn't, because they have all those like knowledge spires or whatever, so they collect knowledge about prior battles, and so for that reason they're said to be quite gifted at learning to fight, because they can basically do VR training by practicing in memories. She does not exhibit much combativeness at any time, but she also doesn't really there's not really a point in the story where she has to. When she and Sira are discussing about what he's going to go off to do to, like, if he's, in the past, I mean, whether or not he's going to go off and protect the people, the discussion, I don't think, is about whether or not she will be able to fight with him, like, physically is able. I think it's more about he's like, I don't want you to come with me and get exiled because I'm about to break the rules majorly. And she kind of gets that, I think. And then again, later on, when Hasima comes to kill her, she doesn't fight back. Again, I don't think because she lacks the battle prowess, but because the laws forbid it, and she's a bit more of a stickler for the rules than Sira. All that to say, I think we have basically no evidence one way or the other if she's bad at fighting or good at fighting. So I'll say that since she's an Auric and they are sort of predisposed to being good at learning to fight, probably 2 points there seems fair. But certainly, we don't see her do a lot of kick-ass fighting in the same way as Zara and Sierra and them. Righteous Honey, this is a hard one for her, partially because she's not a character who's in the story for terribly long, but she is, like many of the Auric, very beholden to their rules in a way that is, one could argue, is not very righteous, because they're letting bad things happen just because it's the status quo, basically. I would say, but she's definitely not unrighteous in the sense of malevolent, but I would say she, more than other Auric, expresses an understanding that being so beholden to the rules is bad, because she still cares for Sierra and understands his viewpoint, even though he's like, hey, I'm about to break all the rules in a big way. She's like, good luck, basically. Whereas I think a lot of the Auric would be all like, no, you bastard, don't do the right thing. That's not what the book says to do. So I think a 3 is fair. A little above average righteousness because she's summoning a lot of willpower to go against the whole rulesy nature of the Auric and her support of Sierra's behavior, even if she's not, especially happy about it. Claudia Cutley, she's probably pretty up there. She seems nice enough to hang out with. She's got all kinds of little hobbies. She likes doing like needlework and picking flowers and stuff. And then later on, she's the acting ruler and like upholds their laws and stuff. I mean, that must be cool to talk about. She's definitely quite personable. I think a 9 is fair there. There's like probably a little bit of stuffiness with her adherence to the rules and everything in her position. Probably an 8 would have been more fair, actually. Hang on 2 seconds. Let me just go back there, and 8 seems fair there. And kindliness, I think, is also quite high. She and Sierra, I think that's probably something that binds them together. They're both quite loving people, and I think they both share that sense of compassion, and it's probably what brought them together in the first place, really. She's just a little more traditional than him or something. But it probably wouldn't be unfair to give her a 9, same as he. It's hard, again, because I have to weigh whether her strict adherence to the people's doctrine, in her own case, not in Sierra's, how much of that I can attribute to just their societal adherence and like the righteousness score, and how much I can attribute to like a personal gentil. I think it's probably fair to give them the same score of 9 each. Cool! The Spider King, I be honest with you, I don't really have a rationale for putting him in here other than he looks cool. I think it's a fair 6 from you. You're very cool looking. Strength, I mean, he's just another monster you take down. He's not really all that. I think a 2 is fair here. Righteous Honey, not really. He's just kind of hanging out here because there's money and he can make webs. He chills out once he's like, oh, hey, you're not just some little goblin thing. And he's cool. And he's like, well, hey, we'll have this. Well, thanks for talking to me. I'll have this little amulet, which is a little weird, but suggests he's not totally morally devoid. Quality Cuddly, he likes spinning yarns, and in the sense of spinning webs and in telling tales. He collects little amulets and stuff. Those are cool pastimes. I think it would get tiring a little fast, and maybe you'd be a little concerned about where he got certain elements of his little token collection. But, yeah, that's cool enough for a time. Kindliness, I mean, yeah, he's like, whoa, once you've beat him, basically, he's like, whoa, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know you felt like that about it. It's cool, we can be cool. Not totally emotionally devoid either. 3 points for you there. He's certainly not as bad as the White Sages, I think we can agree. Alshire, or Outshire, or Alshire, I'm not actually still sure how to say that. I gotta be honest, I forgot this guy was in the game until I went back and looked at the tags for each of my videos to see what some of the major character names were. I was like, oh yeah, that guy. He's another one of Evelyn's higher-ups. He's not quite as well-rounded, I wouldn't say, as Harpsichord. I don't think we ever see his face. Maybe a little bit. I mean, he looks cool. The Red Kingdom outfits are cool. Strength. I think he's even a little weaker than Harpsichord and the others. He's got a lot of military force behind him, and he's very gung-ho, but I wouldn't say he's like an especially gifted combatant in this context of the game. He certainly commands a lot of authority and power. Probably it makes more sense to give him as far as Harpsichord in them, but just for variety being the spice of life, I'll give him a 3. Righteous Honey, I think he maybe is just a bit on a bit of a power trip, I don't feel like he has like as much of an end goal for his soldiering as someone like Harpsichord does. Because they're both like high up generals in Evelyn's army, but like Alshire is just kind of like, point me at him, who am I killing, rather than Harpsichord, who's like trying to to strategize to minimize bloodshed and stuff, at least on the side of the Red Kingdom. I think the dude just enjoys his job a little too much, you know, and for that reason I think it's also fair to give him like a 2 here. Seems reasonably respected in his ranks, so like maybe he's got a bit of interesting clout and some more stories to tell, but nah, he doesn't seem like the kind of person you really want to hang out with. Again, I wouldn't say he's devoid of compassion, but there's not much. I think a 1 is fair there. Moving on to Oboa. He was a confusing guy, that Oboa. Kinda hot, though. I mean, he's jacked and he's cool and lizardy. He's got, like, cool royal robes and stuff because he was formerly the child of the Emperor. Well, he literally is the child of the Emperor still, I guess, but, you know, he's sort of been disowned and stuff. I think a 5 is fair there. His cool, hot lizardiness is a little offset by being a little intense looking and scary. Strength, again, like most of our comrades, I think he's a 4 there. Righteous Honey, I mean, he's confusing, I have to be honest. I can't actually even remember if he joins you for the final fight. I assume he does, and I just never kept him in my party, because I liked Papel and Syrah better. So he's leading a kind of rebellion against the Empire, but then he also does sort of seem to think that the Sayers should be the ones to hold the throne. He was a confusing guy, and he's also, like, splossed with trickery all throughout. I did find, I just didn't really understand his character by the end, was, I think, where I settled on it. So it is kind of hard to place a score here and be confident in it. I think a 1 feels fair, though. Maybe a 2, because he's kind of back and forth. I don't know, he's just so all over the place. I feel like a 1 is fair. He's like, I betrayed the Sayre Empire, and I'm going to lead a revolution so that they don't get their claws on the throne and make the world worse and more industrialized and slave-heavy. But then he's like, joke's on you, Ara, I'm taking the sword, because I want to go decide the throne's fate. And then Gandio dies, and he's like, jokes, actually, maybe I'll come back with you guys. I just don't... He's just a confusing dude. Quality Cuddly, though, I mean, he's like, basically, like a revolution leader. He's very charismatic in that way. He's got a guitar of some kind, a stringed instrument, some variety, plays music, that's cool. These are cool pastimes. He feels like he'd be cool to hang out with. Just so long as you weren't planning to do so for, like, more than a day. Because you'd have no idea what his intentions would be after that. I wouldn't consider him a very trustworthy fellow, but cool and fun to hang out with, probably. And yeah, kindliness, again, I just don't have a beat on this guy. I just found him so confusing as a person, which I think is partially the intent, because he's a bit roguish and stuff. I'll just give him the benefit of the doubt and say 4. He's a bit of a jerk in that he's untrustworthy, but maybe. But he does seem to have compassion for those on the ground around him. But again, it's kind of hard to tell if it's an aura compassion of, I need to go out of my way to keep people well, or if it's more like, I need to keep people well so that people's opinion of me is good, and I can wield that later. But benefit of the doubt, I think a 4 there seems fine. And next up is, of course, Gendio, his brother, I'm pretty sure. I would guess I would put him at the same visual score. Well, actually, he's a little less stylish. He's just got like a purple robe on or whatever it is. So I'll put him down at a 4. Strength, I think he's basically the same as Oboa, right? Like he's basically like the same class and everything. He's got the same skills and stuff. So I think it's fair to put him at the same there, although he dies pretty fast after joining the party. Righteous Honey. Again, you see him for so little time. I don't really have a strong beat on his situation either. I basically think of him as very much like Oboa, but like less revolutionary leader and much more smartass. But I don't think he's quite as tricksy as Oboa. I think his goals are a little more centered. Not that I exactly particularly remember what they were. So I think 1 more point of righteousness feels right. Probably a few fewer points of quality cuddly. I think a 5 seems fair. He's not so stoic that you couldn't imagine talking to him, but I didn't find him especially charming or like he really wanted to be there. Kindliness, I think we can put him a little lower than Oboa, though, because whether it's a facade or not, I think Oboa definitely understands the importance of people's emotional states. Gendio's just a little bit more cantankerous and less friendly. If he understands the importance of other people's emotional states, he doesn't care, I think. So I think a 2 feels right there. But again, Oboa and Gendio, they all felt we got introduced to them very late, and I never really felt like I understood them super well. Moving on to the Sayre Emperor. Again, cool lizardy guy. Awesome outfit. Also sort of an old guy. No shade, but I think a 3 feels right there. Strength. He's pretty tough as a boss fight. Like, he's very resilient, but it wasn't especially difficult to beat that fight, and I think in universe he's supposed to be kind of ailing and not at his the strength he once had. Righteous Honey now is another weird case because not in an interesting parallel to the arc once again, in spite of how in conflict those races are. He's not really going ahead with his plan to chase down the throne because he's certain that he, above all else, will be like the proper wielder of it and he's not that arrogant. It's more because I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it's more his deal is that there's pressure from his people. All the Sayer people on the ground are like, obviously we should have the throne. So he's like, well, if I say no, they're just gonna overthrow me. So at least if I'm the one doing it, I can like try and navigate there in the most diplomatic way. It's kind of his feeling on it, is how it came across to me. And he really doesn't want to fight Ara and friends. He's like, this is a very bad idea for all of us, but I see why you feel the need. I get it. Basically, the entire time you're fighting him, he's like, I get it. Fair enough. I think he's grappling with his morality, so I think a 2 feels fair there. He's definitely trying. Quality of Cuddly, not unlike Sierra, he's a bit world-weary and quite gloomy. You never really get a sense of him getting to be a person for too long. He's just so enraptured with all that's happening and kind of miserable to the point that you would think any free time he had would be spent, like, taking an Advil and lying down rather than, like, I don't know, chatting or reading books together or whatever. Do I think he would make an effort? Sure. Because again, I think kindliness we could probably put, like, a little above average here. I think a lot of people in his position would struggle to find the... Humanity is the wrong word to use, obviously, because he's a Sayer, but the humanity in trying to make an emotional connection and apologize to someone for whom things have gone wrong, and it's not really your fault, but you're taking the responsibility of that in an emotional way. What I'm saying is I think he's kinder than he really has to be, considering his hands are very much bound in the whole situation. Like, you could argue, yes, that he probably could have tried to change his people's minds, but with the understanding that there's a decent chance they would have revolted and tried to kill him and just take the throne anyway. You can kind of agree. There's an argument for what he did being the most righteous thing he was capable of doing. It's a bad situation, though, so I think he's trying to make the best of it emotionally by apologizing to Ara and co. That feels like kindliness to me. And if I'm not mistaken, I was mistaken. I was about to say that was the last person, but I forgot about Demiron. We don't even really meet Demiron before he goes all monstery, do we? I mean, we maybe see him in some of the scenes with Evelyn and stuff, and we maybe see him talk, but like as Ara and co, we don't really meet him. He's even creepier when he's all monstery. I think I'm gonna give him, what did I give Hasima and Ronin 4 and 3 or something? I think a 2 feels appropriate here. Strength out of 5, again, I'm just kind of assuming that because the White Sages are like part of the Amber Throne, that they're pretty all-powerful, even though I don't think you ever specifically fight Demiron. Righteous Honey doesn't apply to there. Quality Cuddly, he's spindly and weird. I don't like it. 1 point. Kindliness, 0. Boom! There we go. Now it is results time. Wow. For such a... There's only like 15 characters went through that. That took like an hour. I had way more thoughts on them than I thought I would, but also I was just kind of... Because the context of the story requires a lot of extrapolation to get a sense of how they'd be to date, because everyone's pretty goal-driven at that time. But results time! Down in the tier of Defiler of Consecrated Ground, incidentally, is the last one we entered. It's Demiron. You're spindly and weird. Don't like ya. See ya. Next in the tier of is Hasima. I actually didn't think it was possible for anyone to score lower than her. I really don't like her. I mean, I feel kind of bad for the sages because they're just drones, right? They can't feel them. They can only like barely. I mean, I don't even know if they feel emotions. I just don't know. They purport to want things, but it's unclear if it's all just smoke and mirrors. You're a total creep, Hasima. Go away. Next up on the tier of also is Ronin. It makes enough sense that the White Sages would all place right around the bottom. They're just kind of mindless, creepy murder drones. But Ronin being at the top of them feels cool enough. He's not as creepy as Hasima, and he's not as weird and spindly as Demiron. But I don't want to date you. See ya. Next up also in the tier of is Alchire. He's just kind of a military, like, adrenaline junkie. I don't know. I don't really know that we have anything in common or that I would want to. Now we're finally in the tier of, the score has jumped dramatically. The Spider King. Yeah, I don't want to date you, but, like, you come a lot closer to, like, a person with feelings and desires and a personality. That's something I can say for you. Sure, tell me a few stories and I'll... Sure, this coin you gave me is cool. Neat. Bye-bye. Have fun in your cave. Also in the tier of, is Gendio. I just find him a bit disagreeable. He's just kind of not very nice. I think that's more or less all there is to it. We didn't know him long, and it was a strained relationship at best. Also right at the top of tier is Evelyn. Yeah, that feels maybe a little harsh. Evelyn is definitely much more of like a person than like the White Sages or the Spider King or even arguably Gendio. She's got a little bit more roundedness to her, but she's just a bit too stern and strict, I think, for me. Setting aside the whole cataclysmic implications of her actions for a moment, and the fact that we really don't agree about what is good for Earth, she's just so ambitious and absorbed in what she believes to be her destiny that I just don't think she has time for people, friends, family. Well, evidently not family, or a romantic relationship. You want to talk to me? I don't want to talk to you, Evelyn. It's fine. We'll go our ways. I'm sorry about stabbing you in the crumbling ruins of that tower, though. I didn't feel great about that. You obviously think you're helping. I disagree, but I can respect that you tried. I do feel bad for Evelyn and all that happened. Now we're up in the tier of F. This is a lot more like, we're a lot less in the territory of like, I'm dating a world-ending supervillain, and more like, I'm dating just a not great person, which feels an appropriate summary of Axis. I don't really like to say people are bad. I think people's actions are good or bad, and that's more important. I think Axis is a person who takes a lot of bad actions and just isn't very personable and doesn't seem to have much interest in a relationship. Again, he and Evelyn, very ambitious pair of those two. The apple does not fall far. But I think Evelyn's perhaps a little more self-aware that what she's doing is not all the way above board, and Axis, I think, maybe doesn't. And so for his ignorance, I granted him a slightly higher score. Also in F tier is the Sarah Emperor. Yeah, it's very much like circumstantially, we weren't getting on. And also, you're an old guy. No offense, again, old people are totally cool. It's just hard to see myself dating one whose eyebrows are longer than my soul. But I wish we'd met under better circumstances. We probably could have been pals. Now we're in D tier. This is a relationship that is more problem than benefit. But hey, there's something there. Oh, Boa, he's a charming dude and an interesting fellow. I just don't think we have very compatible personalities. I think honesty is a great virtue. I'm not fond of when people take my swords and throw me off cliffs, also. Not having that quality is a quality I admire. Also in D tier is Harpsichord. I don't think of Harpsichord as a really bad guy. And I do think of him as an interesting guy. But he's also a soldier and a slightly older man, and is maybe just a bit too willing to sacrifice things for his goals. Not to the degree that some people are in tier were. It's like, sure, we'd go on a few dates, but I think there's a certain point where you just gotta draw a line in the sand and be like, whoa, dude, I think your boss is a little uncool. I wasn't super fond of the time where you and her like flew over and started raising villages and stuff for political sway to get to the magic chair. I get that wasn't really what you were hoping for, but you still did it. Maybe you go sort that stuff out, and then a few tiers down the line we'll talk. Now we're up into C tier, approaching much more of an average relationship. Don't have much in common maybe, but they're not so bad. And that's probably about all I can really say about Nuo. I think I'm just very personally not on board with any mindset or worldview that includes certain people being superior to others based on something so arbitrary as place of birth. I would call that bigotry. That's what I would call that. I appreciate you trying to shake it off, though, and your hobbies are cool, and you're chill enough to hang around with, and so far there's been very little worry of me getting killed by monsters in all this, because you're all very gifted fighters, so that's nice. You're alright, Nuo. Up in B tier, this is a lot more of a cool relationship. At the point of B tier, it's very much more like normal relationship, positives and negatives are in roughly equal measure. Although even in the case of Sierra, because he's at 74%, I think I would say more positives than negatives. Sierra's a great dude. He's very nice. He dates in the game, so clearly he's dateable. Totally kick-ass and cool in a fight. He looks very cool. He's got a very good head on his shoulders, I think. There's every possibility that he would be, like, out of your life for several years because he had to do something that was really good and heroic, but you know, sort of meant the relationship became a long-distance one for a time. Really, where he loses most of the points is, of course, the quality of cuddly, because he's just not anymore at the point of the story in which we join him looking for that kind of relationship, because he's already got Porcelian, and he knows that's not going to last very long. And he doesn't got Porcelian as such because he's exiled, but he's still clinging on to that. You know, he's very hung up on his ex. He would match with him on Tinder, and then he would spend the entire date talking about his ex, and how sad it is that he hasn't seen her in a while. But other than that, he'd be perfectly gentlemanly and very sweet. And certainly an interesting fellow, I think we can all agree. And at 1 point higher is Porcelian! Actually, I'm kind of surprised that she ranked higher than him. Only by a little bit, though, and I guess it makes plenty of sense because she's definitely a lot more personable at the time you meet her, and sort of, we get to see more of her, I don't want to say domestic side, because that makes it sound like she's a farm animal. But you know what I mean, like the side of her that is not in war times, you know? We get to see her love languages and things when she's, like, making the cloak for Sierra and all. Again, she and Sierra are very similar. They're both very sweet, decent people. I think the main hurdle with me and her would be that we would both struggle with each other would be that I don't consider myself especially beholden to or fond of tradition, and she is kind of the opposite in ways. So that's that. And now right at the top of B tier, Gadara! Obviously there'd be the hurdle of she isn't able to speak currently, but she can write, I can read. So that's good. And ultimately, R is super, super cool and super pretty and super nice and super good at fighting. I do like her. She does, I mean, again, it's hard to say super definitively, considering how infrequently she is able to speak in the game, but she is pretty damn ambitious and driven in her quest for wrecking the throne, which again I think comes from a very good place, but it does render her somewhat stoic, I think, and just it would be a little hard to break down that wall. It's very hard to imagine like going to an arcade with Aura, you know what I mean? Like she would probably walk in, break one of the games by like maxing the score counter by like 5,000 and be like, great, let's go. Like leave with like a bundle of 6,000 prize tickets slung over her shoulder, buy you like the biggest bear you want on the way out and be like, did you like it? Cool, onward. To victory! But again, kind of hard to describe considering she's taken an inadvertent oath of silence. And that's the heart of it, folks. We had no one breaking B tier, but Sierra Porcelain and Aura being at the top of B tier feels about right to me. That was an interesting one. That was one of the strangest of these multiversal bachelors we've done, because morality in the world of the Ember Throne is very, very peculiar. Everyone's got an idea of how the world should be, and no one agrees on how to bring it about. And also, a fair bit of the talk that goes on in the game is pretty business, so it can be kind of hard to get a sense for how just hanging out with these people in a chill environment would feel. But there you go. Took way longer than I was expecting, considering we only had 15 candidates. But that was a lot of fun. Next video on my channel is going to be some more Danganronpa and Trigger Happy Havoc, so do look on out for that, and that'll be all for now. Thank you so very much for coming around. Hopefully I'll see you around. Admiral's gonna be out of here now. Peace! You can watch DVDs, but the place to have to watch DVDs, it's gotta be the AV room.